Welcome, everyone, to the first roundtable of the Stevens Low Residency MFA in Screenwriting. We're very excited tonight because we're joined by 5 women who are going to help us explore the question of whether there's a legal remedy to the situation of gender discrimination in Hollywood. We're going to talk a lot about personal experience and how important it is to have a female voice in the room, and that's kind of where we're planning on going. We'll take questions at the end, so everybody be thinking, jotting down notes, and enjoying yourself. I'm very excited to be joined tonight by 5 women who are just having exciting things happen in their career, and that's where all of us want to be in a few years, right? So I'm going to begin to my left with Minoti, Vaishnav. Oh, you're right there. Sorry, Kate stepped in at the last minute. There you go. We'll start with Kate then. Kate can. Okay. All right, go for it.
So I was out of college for a couple years before I even realized that writing for television was a thing that people do. So I took my savings account and my resume of job experience and got into USC and kind of immediately set upon a plan of becoming a writer's assistant because I just sensed that I didn't know how to write for television and would benefit from sort of using what I knew how to do already, answering phones and making copies, all this kind of stuff, to fill that space. So I had trouble finding internships. I think possibly I was too qualified, I don't know. But I did finally get an internship on a, nobody had heard of it, basic cable show, which was super fun, did a bunch of research. And then when we premiered, it turned out to be Mad Men. And it was great to go from what is the show to, oh, I've been interning on Mad Men for 6 months. And then sort of from that, everything followed. The woman who'd hired me as an intern on Mad Men moved to Breaking Bad as their writer's assistant, and she needed a writer's PA, so she called me up and said, do you want that? And I was like, yes, please. And I worked on 3 seasons of Breaking Bad, and then Rectify, which is a series by the same producing team, Grand Via, Mark Johnson, and Melissa Bernstein, was starting up. No one in that writer's room had really worked in a full-blown writer's room. We'd had 1 CSI writer at the CSI room, I'm told is quite dysfunctional. So they kind of poached me, kind of invited me, kind of kicked me into Rectify. I was there for a season, and then they gave me a script to co-write with my boss in season 2. And we were nominated for a Writers Guild Award for that, so I guess he liked it. And this season, season 3, I got staffed.
Ooh, very cool. Excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you. Minoti, Vaishnav.
So my name is Minoti Vaishnav. I actually grew up in India, and I moved here when I was 19. Did not know a soul in Los Angeles, but I really wanted to work in film and television and entertainment. And I've done a lot of different things in entertainment. I've worked in event production, so I started out in that, doing Fashion Week, and then ended up doing award shows and, you know, kind of getting my foot in the door that way. I worked in music. I was a singer-songwriter, had 2 albums out, did a little bit of scoring for movies. And then finally, while I was still doing my degree, which was in screenwriting, I decided after I graduated that I was going to start my own production company to get my foot in the door with writing. So I ended up doing that, and now I own a production company. It's called Prophecy Girl Films, and I write and develop independent documentaries, features, shorts. The company also does marketing and PR, but my department is mostly writing and development. So yeah, that's kind of what I do now.
All right, and then we have 2 women who are on the Women's Initiative at the Writers Guild, which has been a fascinating group to be dealt with. That's Elizabeth Martin and Allison Schroeder.
So we work the women of the WGA together, and we know each other from Stanford, but we are not writing partners, but we do read each other's works and bemoan the state of affairs on a daily basis. I went to USC Film School. I was a writer's PA on Smallville. I was a staff writer on 90210, the new one. Then I sold a pilot. Then I wrote Mean Girls 2. Then I switched genres, and I sold a spec about Agatha Christie. And then recently, I did a musical also for Awesomeness TV. I like to do every genre. You can't pigeonhole me. And then recently, I just adapted a book called Hidden Figures, which is the true story of female mathematicians at NASA during the Cold War who are black. Suck it. So,
And it's brilliant.
So Fox just picked it up. Ted Melfi of St. Vincent is directing. We're shooting early next year, and it'll be released in December. Yay!
So we met in Stanford, where I was an acting major because I thought I would never want to write. So I did acting and directing, and I went back to theater after school and worked in regional theater for a long time, mostly Shakespeare. And finally, one day, as I was working with my friend, making costumes for a show we were directing in and starring in, and had 10 days of rehearsal to put up in a tiny theater in New Hampshire, we looked at each other and we said, if we're going to work this hard and not get paid, we want to be screenwriters. So that's my writing partner, Lauren, and so she and I, packed our belongings into a van, and we drove up to my parents' cottage in Canada, and we sat down to write our first script. And 10 years later, here we are. Yeah, very long road. We made lots of mistakes, entered lots of obscure contests, and won a lot of them, which kept us going. And then our big break was we won an obscure contest, which got us the opportunity to do a rewrite for Amazon Studios on a Grimm's fairy tale adaptation. So we worked on that for 2 years. It was great. It tested off the charts, and then they decided they didn't want to make it. That happens. So then unemployed for a year, and then we wrote on spec a live-action version of Mulan because it is in the public domain. We were not making a live-action version of the Disney movie, but
Very important.
it's a very important distinction. It is an 800-year-old story. That's what we took and did an adaptation of. And Disney called us within 24 hours of it going out and said, don't you dare sell this to anybody else. So we didn't. So now we're doing the rewrite.
Awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.
And finally, we have Niceole Levy.
Hi there. So I acted as well. I moved here to LA from the middle of the Mojave Desert in a little speck of a town by a military base. So I'd spent my whole life around pilots and Navy jocks and wanted no part of that. Came here, studied acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. My first job, in fact, while I went there, was here at this hotel, answering the phones. I discovered while I was at the Academy that I was a writer who could act, not an actress who could write, and wanted to put myself through USC, and in order to do that, I became a police dispatcher, worked graveyard shifts, then went to school all day, got out of that, and then tried to write features for a few years, didn't really get anywhere. Was lucky enough to find a mentor, which we'll talk about later, who every time I was like, I just can't do it anymore, she was like, go finish that script. And I did, and eventually one of the scripts she made me finish got me in the CBS Writers Mentoring Program. And from that, pretty much my whole world as a writer opened up. I went from there to NBC's Writers on the Verge. Through each program, I got a manager and an agent, went through staffing, promptly did not staff my first year out. And then the next year was lucky enough to get staffed on Ironside, where I had a really great boss, and he gave me a great recommendation coming out of that, even though we got canceled. Went to Allegiance at NBC last year, had 3 great bosses who all gave me great recommendations this year going out, and I ended up working for one of their best friends on The Mysteries of Laura, which we are currently breaking episode 8 of right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, actually, Elizabeth told me earlier that she has some wonderful statistics to share with us so we can set the tone of what we're talking about and what we're attempting to work against. So what do you have?
Well, so I was looking at an article in the Harvard Law Review about unconscious bias, because that's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about any kind of legal discussion of inherent gender bias or racism in our industry. You're just not, almost never, I'm not going to say absolutely never, but almost never are you going to run into that person who's just like, women just can't write, or like, we can't hire a black person. Like, it's not impossible, but it's pretty unlikely. But we all have certain unconscious biases. This is now a well-documented area of study, and it's entering the legal realm. And there are cases that are being won by people who are being discriminated against from an unconscious bias standpoint. And from an evolutionary standpoint, unconscious bias is really important, actually, right? It's the thing that helps us process all of these millions of bits of data we're getting it every second of every day of our lives. It's the thing that evolutionarily made you be able to run away from the tiger because you saw the bushes moving and you were like, that's probably a tiger, I should get out of here. Because sticking around to see, is it really a tiger or is it not a tiger? That's not actually going to help you stay alive. So we all have these. You can go online and take an unconscious bias test, which are called, I wrote it down because, implicit association tests. And you'll find that you have something. I mean, we just all do. And the thing is that what it really means is we all think in stereotypes to some degree. And in the workplace, that manifests itself in a way that basically, if you are not the normal thing that people expect to be doing in that job, people are more likely to not hire you to do that job, not promote you to do that job. And it's just about how we process information. So, you know, in terms of ways we can combat this, education is the biggest way. Just making people aware that you have unconscious bias and you should be aware of it. And then both the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, Google, we're all doing work that's basically putting together the statistics on these things because it helps. Like one of the things the Directors Guild is doing is they're going to each show and they're saying you hired 2 women in your entire 22 episode season this year to direct episodes. Just so you know, that's what you did. And people are surprised because they don't know they're doing it. Google, which is a fairly progressive company, for 7 years, those Google Doodles that come up on Google, for 7 years, not one woman's birthday was celebrated. They didn't know they were doing it. So
they know now.
They know now. They fixed the problem.
And that's the perfect example. By showcasing these ideas, I noticed the other day Ida Wells' birthday came up. And I was able to notate that to some friends. But that would, exactly, they needed, as soon as they saw the mistake, they were willing to fix it.
They were. And so that's why Women of the WGA exists. We're working on pointing out these unconscious biases. We did a whole panel with Google and the Gina Davidson Institute on Gender and Media where we sat showrunners and executives down and we said, this is what is happening.
Right, like do you realize that in movies, in a crowd scene, 80% of it is male? Do you realize in the world it's 50%? And they're like, no, didn't get that at all, you know? And so that's a stage manager, actually, that needs to be told that because they're going and pulling extras for a scene. As a writer, your fix is very simple. You write into it a crowd scene dash half women, half men.
But you have to point it out because they don't know they're doing it. So one of the interesting statistics, and this is all from Center for the Study of Women in TV and Film, and it's a great organization. Every year they look at the top films, what the percentage of women in top positions, in roles in front of the camera. But one of the horrifying ones is, right, that if in films with either a female director or a writer, women make up 39% of the protagonists. But in films with only male writers and directors, women make up 4% of protagonists. The numbers are similar if you look at people in leadership positions, people who are identified by a job versus a relationship status. You know, women are more likely, by a lot, to be defined only as a girlfriend, wife, mother, etc. Whereas man is very likely, I think it's 85%, it might be 89% likely to be identified as with a career that we even probably see him doing on screen. So think about this from a societal perspective, right? We're basically telling kids as they're growing up that women are invisible, that we don't count. And again, from an unconscious...
That's not true. They want us to cook and clean.
Oh, that's true.
And have babies. Don't forget
And
have
babies.
babies.
Yes, there you go.
But from an unconscious bias standpoint, right, when a crowd scene only has 30% women, we're basically saying that's how many women are out there in the world. Like, because we all are absorbing this information and forming unconscious biases based on what we see.
Right, and it's dribbling over to your real life. So an actual thing you can do in your life is that my fiance worked, he's a half-hour writer, and he was on About a Boy. And we went to the Christmas party. We meet people. Erin, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a sitcom writer. Allison, how did you two meet? Well, we met at the Writers Guild holiday party. Oh, you're a writer too. Yes, I am. Does he help you with your writing? Now, you don't know me yet, but I was like, oh no, I'm much further along in my career than him. And that was my standard answer. Because these people needed to be regulated and regulated fast, and they all looked horrified. But it's out there, and if we can change it just in our interactions in a networking event, like, maybe they'll think about that when they're writing the scene.
Exactly. And that leads me to the question that I wanted to start with, because I wanted to lay that groundwork of how important it is to have the various voices in the room. Here we're talking about gender change, but it includes writers of color and other types of voices in the room. So I was going to ask everybody individually to think about a time when being the woman writer in the room in a group helped change something in a story. So very briefly, I remember on Touched by an Angel, which was the show that I was on, we were doing an episode where the African-American angel was going to play the maid to a family and the Irish angel was going to play a lawyer. And I said, you know, it'd be really nice if I could see the African-American woman be the lawyer once. And you know what? Everybody in the room was a wonderful person. It just, everyone fell into stereotypes. And when I announced it, I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And we switched it, and it was a very fun episode. So it is up to us to make those changes. And so I think it'd be fun to hear some personal experiences. We could start on the end with Niceole.
Sure. As I was saying earlier, I've had a little bit of a unique experience, I think, as a woman writer in the TV business. When they tell you, like, 2% of shows staff more than one woman, I am on those. That 2% of shows is all I work on so far. So I've been very lucky. There were 3 women on the staff at Ironside, all women of color, by the way, which is never happens. It was great. And then on Allegiance, there were 4 women. 2 of us were writers of color. And on this show, there are 3. We count? Yes, 3 women.
Out of staff, so how large then in total?
In groups of about 8 to 10 writers, depending on the grouping. And I will say, all of us hired by male showrunners. So I have had a pretty blessed run of it so far. But I will say, even just the other day, we were breaking a pitch to write up a story area for the network. And we were talking about it in terms of a male villain. And I was like, you know what would be great is if it was a female villain. And everyone was like, oh yeah, like that could work. And then our female producer came in and I was like, yeah, we were kind of talking about being a woman. She's like, love it, it's a woman. We're just saying it's a woman. That's what it's going to be. And so sometimes it's not, again, it's not that someone isn't amenable to it, it just hasn't come up. We're talking in terms of a super smart villain who's very crafty and the default is a man. But if you pitch it, people are like, oh yeah, this could totally be a female character, and that's what we ended up sending in. But it was great to have my female co-EP be able to come in and go, yes, that's it. We're just not even saying it could be male or female. It's a woman from here on out.
The decision makers, it's important to be the decision maker. Excellent.
So my writing partner and I are in features. We've never had the joys of the writer's room and writing in a group. But so it's kind of up to us. But currently we're doing a graphic novel adaptation, and it's a lot, it's set in space, so you know a lot of the characters have genders already attached to them because there's existing material. But because it's set in space, there's a lot of characters that are ungendered. They're other. And so anytime there's a character that's ungendered in the source material, it's a woman. It doesn't matter what that person, what that thing or creature or anything, what their purpose is in the script. We've just made them all women. We'll see if we get pushback, but currently, our producer hasn't even blinked. So, and it's really important because in the top 100 grossing films of last year, 30% of all speaking roles, women. That's it.
30%?
30%.
God, that's better than I thought it was. So the first time and only time I was on a writing staff was 90210, and it was 8 women and 3 men, and those men were terrified. And honestly, like, I was the prude, so the only change I was like, they're not lesbian kissing. Like, all the women are like, lesbian kiss. I'm like, not. Like, that was my big moment. But I would say it's more, what I'm finding now, it took me I kind of rolled off my credits. It wasn't that fast. It took me 2.5 years to transition from teen to action films. And I went into a production company, and they were trying to do like the new Scarlet Pimpernel, and they wanted the Scarlet Pimpernel to be a woman. And they'd heard from like 20 men, and you could just see them glazed over. And they came in and they said, you know, how would you write this? And I said, well, if I were a spy. And they were immediately like, wait, what? And I think, and I'm not sure, but I think that most people had said, well, I would come in sexy and like seduce the bad guy and kill him. I was like, look, I'd have a baby bump and I'd be a hot mess, and all my weapons would be in my baby bump. And I would like get into the hospital with the guys having surgery, and then I would go into labor with like a fake water breaking on a guard. I'm sorry, I don't care how badass that guard is. He's gonna freak out, right? And then I would kill him, and I would kill the dictator, and they just stared at me. And they were like, yeah, you're the one. Now, of course, ultimately the project never went, but by the end of that pitch, she was a secret agent who was going through fertility, egg freezing, with like, you know, the husband that was supportive of her career. I never made it, but I dream someday.
Yeah, I also mostly work with features, but and shorts. But I do notice, and maybe it is a subconscious thing, that when I pitch creative ideas in a script to a client who's a woman, they take all my ideas, whereas clients who are men don't. However, it did happen one time where it was a client who was a man, and we did a pilot, and there was a character in there who was a woman who was super badass. She was a protagonist, she was super badass, but that's it. She had no backstory. So she was just this badass woman. She wasn't really a well-done character, and I was like, look, you know, she can't just be like this badass character. What's her motivation? What's her backstory? Give her something to work with. You know, if it was a man, what would be his motivation? What would be his backstory? You know, it's not different. Like, we're all people. Like, think about how you would write that character as a man and write it as a woman. And I think that really helped him, because that's what ended up happening in the development stage. And so, yeah, that, you know, was my story with that.
How wonderful. And if you think about that, that's so funny. You made me think about Die Hard and the fact that even the policeman in Die Hard, who was such a small character, had a massive backstory. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How fun. All right, Kate.
Well, I've only been a writer in a writer's room for, you know, a season and a little. And also, I have to say, the Rectify writing staff has not always been all male. We had a season where there was another female writer. But they're all very, very thoughtful writers, and they think very, very hard about character in a way that that makes it very hard for there to be like an obvious story of a way to, you know, shine a light. But I do think that the thing that I've brought to the table is, I was there in the first season as a writer's assistant, and I sort of gradually transitioned to this writer's role, and I was the only woman in the first season. I was one of 2 women in the second season, and in the third season back to being the only woman. And there's an assumption, like, you know, I don't think anyone would put it this way, but there is sort of a hope if we go wildly off target with the female characters, Kate will say something. I'm there to partly advocate for the female characters. But often I find myself saying, no, okay, look, yes, I love the female character, but I think you all think that I am talking about this in terms of like, what's in it for her. Like, this woman is a terrible match for this man. He could do better. And I've like explained the kind of woman who would love him and think he was amazing and couldn't believe that he feels as bad about himself as he does. And I've explained like who this woman is and what she does for a living. And there's always sort of a quiet moment like, wow, she's as much of an advocate of the male characters as the female characters. And I think that's an experience that more people could have in the industry, that you don't bring the woman in to write the female characters. You bring her in because I have brothers, I have a husband, I have a father, I have male coworkers, I have good male friends. I'm a caretaker of all humanity in the story, and I advocate for all of them equally. I hope that is kind of an example.
I love the phrase, a caretaker for all humanity in the story. That's beautiful. That's what a writer is in the long run, right? Well, that's beautiful. Thank you all. I love that. All right, so let's talk about this concept of what legal steps do we think can be taken and what steps do we want to be taken?
I mean, so the Harvard, the Harvard Law Review does say that legal steps can be taken, right? But are, I mean,
we're not a protected class.
We're
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go after, it would have to not be about women, but you could go after the unconscious bias issue because you have to, it has to be based on a protected class. I'm not really an advocate for legal change personally. It has been very effective in the past, don't get me wrong, but the thing is the box office numbers bear out our point of view. 6 of this year's top 10 grossers star women. And if you remove the budgets, if you even out the budgets of all movies basically, they gross the same, whether they're written and directed or starring women or written, directed, and starring men. The reason male movies make more money is because they cost more. That's it. So if you look at Hollywood is a business in the end, and the money is in more diverse programming. Study after study after study is coming out recently saying if you have diverse characters on TV, you get more eyeballs on that TV. So this is, in my opinion, a relatively short-term problem. It's gonna change. It has to change.
It is changing
because the money says change. And I cannot tell you the number of meetings I've been to in the last couple of months since we sold Mulan, where we've been sat down and said, oh my God, by men who said, you know, for the last few years, I have not been able to make a female protagonist movie. I cannot tell you how excited I am to make a female protagonist movie, to get a woman writer in here to do that. Let's do it. They all want to, and now they can. Now their bosses have all said, not just you can do it, but please do it. Actively seek this out, which is why, you know, as writers of action movies, we're sitting in these rooms now because they want action movies starring women because they're making money. Look at Hunger Games.
Yeah, they're making money. And I mean, I was in a meeting recently to Kate's point where they said, well, can you write men? I said, of course I can write men. I don't know if you know this, but Bond girls have been written by men for a long time. I'd actually love to see a Bond girl written by a woman, but I can still make James Bond kick ass, you know? Right. And I think it's changing. I think that what people sometimes lose sight of is that it takes a certain age to reach a certain level of power, right? And so our generation that grew up with equality and you can be anything you want to be and women are just powerful, we're just now getting to points of power in the industry. So I can feel it. I can feel it around me. I think it's happening. I would say I've definitely been given a lot of my breaks by men. I think you're going to find people that support you and you're going to find people that hate you. And it really is regardless of race and gender, to be honest with you. And the biggest thing you can do is just be gracious in the moment, but also sometimes find a way to point out that maybe what they're saying is slightly inappropriate. And if they don't realize it in the moment, just don't do business with them again. And I think I did, like 44 pitches and didn't sell one. And my manager, he's a wonderful guy, just turned to me and said, someday they'll rue the day. And I sometimes just, you think that to yourself, because it doesn't matter what project you're up for, Hollywood is cutthroat, you know? And you don't not get the job because you're a woman. There's tons of reasons why you don't get it. So just never get a chip on your shoulder. And I think that's a big thing.
It's huge, huge. You can feel the resentment and anger and bitterness coming off of people, and it is not attractive. And it is a big problem.
We have problems, you know, with some of the meetings at the Guild where people just, it becomes a vent fest, you know, and there's a lot of stuff left over from like 20 years ago and then stuff that's more recent, and we were just like, we don't want to focus on the problem, we want to focus on the solution. And so that's become the new mission of the initiative is, I don't want to talk about how showrunners say they can't find female staff writers. Instead, I'm going to do an event where we invite 6 showrunners and we introduce them to 6 staff writers. And there's proof. We just did an event where we had 25 writers with indie scripts under $5 million meet with 25 indie directors. Females, all females.
And that was a week ago, and I had a follow-up meeting with one of the directors today who loved both of the scripts we gave her and is going out to find money for them on Friday.
Yeah.
You know, we put people in the room together, and stuff happens.
I was going to say just what you were talking about is avoiding getting the chip on your shoulder. I would say just in general, my philosophy going out for staffing and meetings, and you know, when you're really sort of in it, and you go on a lot of meetings, and you're like, I really want to get that job, and then your friend gets that job, and my feeling is I don't get any job I'm not meant to get. Yeah. So I try not to read too much into what the reasons behind it are. I end up where I'm supposed to be all the time. That said, I am a person who loves, you know, female. I love action, period. I love female-driven action. So I am a huge fan of what I watch. I am very vocal about it, and I feel like going out and supporting those things that you love and getting other writers to support them and getting your crowd supporting that is huge. One of the people who was like, where is my Black Widow action figure? And you know what I put on hold at the comic shop today? My Black Widow action figure. Because enough people bitched and moaned and complained that there is one now. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, tell the businesses that are producing your entertainment what you want from them.
With your dollars.
With your dollars and with your fandom and your excitement, and you get out there and you're like, I will buy this if you make it. Because I think that's how stuff gets done.
Yeah.
Opening weekend in particular, if you want to see more films written and directed by women, go to their opening weekend, because that's the most important thing.
I actually think the hiring bias is there, whether it's unconscious or not, but I do agree that there's a way to deal with it, you know, and you have to deal with it in a positive way and not, I completely agree with that. I mean, I see it all the time, because I deal with a lot of clients, and there's very marked differences in the way some people behave and some people behave. So I definitely think that it exists, but you definitely have to deal with it in an, okay, well, you know, you don't want to hire me or you don't want to do this, that's fine. I'll just go do this instead, you know, and you just have to be like, all right, you don't think I'm good? Well, I am good. I'm going to be better, and it's at something else, like a different project. And you kind of have to like put it on yourself to just do what you're doing rather than be like, well, I'm not doing well because of this reason. I mean, you can't really do that. Yeah. So, yeah.
You gotta own your mistakes, too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's part of the learning process. But I think the biggest pitfall, and a bunch of us were at USC, is there were the people that were in grad school that had stars in their eyes, and they were going to be the exception, and they were going to go out and get that greenlit movie. And I had been a financial analyst for 2 years, because that's normal. And I came into this as a business. And so the first thing I did was I went out and I got a job. And I had to take that off my resume. I had to dumb down my resume. But I was the best grocery shopper you have ever seen. And poor Kate was...
I interned for you.
Yeah, she interned for me in Smallville, and I gave this banana lecture once. Do you remember that? And you emailed me like way after. But the kids kept buying rotten bananas. And
was I a rotten banana
No,
buyer?
you were a good banana buyer.
You were very good.
But you remembered it when you were interning at Mad Men because someone had bought you a bunch of rotten bananas. And it's like, it seems stupid, but I'm telling you right now, being competent in your first job goes a long, long way. And that's how you keep making relationships. And you suddenly start getting promoted. You know, I met a mentor from USC. I worked with him for free for a year. You know, people will give you a shot if you keep showing up to the game, as long as whatever your job is,
Whatever it is,
you do it with pride and with grace and with elegance. And when they ask you in the interview, can you Xerox on 3-hole punch paper, don't laugh at them. Just say, yes, I can. Yes. And you will get the job.
Even if it's not true, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you're all very smart.
Just going to jump in to say that that's actually been my solution. My solution has been to focus on incoming folks and train the holy bejesus out of them. I had 4 people who'd never script coordinated in their life in my living room last week. Woman of color, 2 other women, and 1 guy from USC, because I wasn't just going to be like, no. And it was like a 3-hour walkthrough, and then afterwards, someone called me and said, I need a script coordinator. I can only pay minimum wage. It's a pilot. It's a week. It's very indie. And I gave them the resume of one of the people who was in my living room. And I'm getting to the point now where I might be on the verge of like blogging about it or something, because it really, like, I hope everyone here can de-jam a copier and make a pot of coffee, even if you don't drink coffee, that somebody, I mean, I'll say this, not everyone should be an assistant. It's not for everyone. I'm the oldest of 5, that's probably a determiner of some kind. This is a particular mentality who like looks at bananas and go, I gotta get some green ones, some yellow ones, and just like a couple with brown speckles.
That's right.
I was extremely analytical about it. I had like inventory lists in Microsoft Word that I'd print, and I'd go to the kitchen, and I would be like, Diet Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper, caffeine free.
It's exactly
This
how you do it.
Absolutely, that's how you do it.
And I would cross it off if we didn't have it, and I'd highlight it if we needed it. And I had floor plans for Ralph's in 3 different regions of Los Angeles memorized, because I was like, if I need to like get peanut butter for myself, I can swing through and I can get that one kind of LaCroix they like, and then the bananas at Ralph's are not bad, but like really
true.
Bristol Farms. If you're buying fruit for somebody, go to Bristol Farms, because you're not paying for it, and that's the best fruit in town. But this was like the level of analysis I used to bring to the job, and that's what I've been trying to train people with now, because I realize that so much of what I've accomplished is by being a fly on the wall when they are breaking the scene where Gus Fring is gonna buy it. And I can hear the iterations and they go totally down the wrong way, put it on the board, plan to write it, and then go, wait, no, back it up, it's actually this. No, actually it's not that either. And 2 more of those. And then finally the 6th one is the one that they get to. And I have so much experience from watching writers work and fail and start again that people who, were only on one show with one group of people, they don't have. I'm very, happy for them that works so brilliantly for them. But I really pride myself on the diversity of things that I've done. I worked as a script coordinator, which I just want to take a sidebar. The script coordinator job, if you have a good eye for typos and you have good attention to detail and you are good at managing your own frustration, you will work forever. I wrapped as a staff writer on Rectify, and I got an email from someone I'd worked for 1.5 years ago asking me if I wanted to be a script coordinator on their series. Like, I get them, I still get them all the time. I could be working continuously as a script coordinator if I wanted to. I can't, but I could. It's the kind of job that pays your bills, you make acquaintances, you read the scripts at every step of development. Again, it's not for everyone, but these are the things that I've been trying to do is look at the bottom rung and educate those people and give them the skills they need to survive, because a lot of what happened for me was that I interned, and interning for no money taught me a lot. First of all, unpaid internships are increasingly difficult to get because of the lawsuits. Second of all, if you're going to pay an intern, you might as well pay a PA. And if you're going to pay a PA, you might as well get a good one, and so you're not going to get an intern. So now, what I've been trying to do is try to help people skip the necessary economic advantage that you have to be able to work unpaid for 6 months by giving them the stuff they would learn in an internship so that they come in sort of up to speed. So.
And I think, just to that point, be nice to assistants. First of all, if we've worked our ass off as an assistant, when you come in, we're watching you. Like, know that first. But also, be incredibly gracious to every assistant you meet in town. We did an event, and a lot of people don't realize at the Guild that Elizabeth and I are just members, like volunteering our time for the good of humanity. And there's really not a huge benefit to a lot of these events, and this
For us.
For us. Yeah. I mean, except spending time together.
Yeah.
So this woman just sent this irate email afterwards about how her title had been changed. And how dare I? And I wrote back what I felt was a shaming email that said, well, I'm in the hospital because my mother just had surgery and I was up till 5 a.m. working on this program, and I believe that spell check just fixed it and I didn't catch it, and I apologize, and this is run by volunteers, and I hope the event was a success and we look forward to more. And the response was not shamed at all. It was not pleasant.
So this is a professional writing organization. How dare you change my title?
And I was just like, I don't know, because you were using a weird spelling of it, and I didn't realize it was on purpose. And the truth is, I didn't change it. The computer did. In the war of man versus machine, the machine is beating me right now.
And I proofread it, and I didn't clock it
And she
either,
didn't clock it either.
because it was a weird spelling, and then the computer changed to the normal spelling, and
Boy, am I gonna remember that.
Yeah.
And if you're on listservs, man, those like people that go ballistic on listservs, like, do you not realize who else is on that listserv? Yes. Like, I have a list of people that I will not work with, And so I just think you need to be very careful in this industry. It's very small. Look at this. I mean, Kate, and I were at Smallville.
2007, 6? 2007, because the writer's strike.
Because we had just gotten the right to vote at 18. And
I was in kindergarten.
You were in kindergarten. I was in first grade.
Good try.
To that end, I would just second that how you carry yourself once you come here and start building your career, it's important all the time. Like, you don't want to be out smack talking some show or talking crap about an EP somewhere, because you just never know who's listening, who's paying attention to what you're doing, who will remember you because there's something distinctive about you, and then you go in and have a meeting with that person. We just had an experience at work where some film students were visiting our lot, and some of our executive producers were downstairs, and instead of people taking advantage of the fact that I'm on a TV lot where actual shows get made, we're Berlanti camp. Every Greg Berlanti show is on this lot. And instead of going over like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and introducing themselves, they were talking about how brilliant their short was and how they knew for sure they were going to get hired somewhere off of it. And all the EPs were like, because, it's the dream, sure, but it just doesn't happen that way. And instead of building a relationship and getting a, hey, when I'm ready to start staffing, could I write you for some advice? They made a bad impression. And you just want to always be aware of that, because you never know how that's going to loop back around for you later.
Particularly because getting a career in this business will take you 3 times as long as you think it will.
Yes.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
The Writers Guild assigns you a mentor group when you first join, which is awesome. I'm still friends with mine, and we go out to dinner every so often, but I thought it was a long time for me and my writing partner to break in. It was 8 years, give or take. We were by far the shortest ones in our mentor group. The next was 12, then 15, then 20 years of writing before they became professional writers. So, long haul. And think that those relationships that whoever you meet, who you might make a relationship with, like, you're looking 5 years down the road at following up with that person, making sure that that relationship grows. I just had lunch with some composer friends of mine who they had made a relationship with Mark Cherry 10 years ago that has just paid off in a pilot sale for them. And that was a well-cultivated relationship that they spent a decade growing.
Yeah, and when you ask for these relationships, like if you go to an event, don't go up to the person and say, hey, will you read a script of mine? Yes. That's a huge time commitment. Say, hey, can I email you and take you for coffee for advice? You're going to get a hell of a lot more yeses. And that's what I did at a USC event. And I graduated in 2006, and I was staffed in 2008, and I was lucky. I mean, that's insanely fast. But like you said, I had been writing and competing, since middle school. But I asked him, can I do coffee? And he said, yes. And I said, can I come shadow you as you do your pilot? Yes. Then he started inviting me, because I happened to be working on Pineapple Express, and he was friends with Judd, and so I drove him in the golf cart, right? And he was happy to see me working. That meant something to him. It didn't matter that I was driving the golf cart. I was hustling. And finally I won the Stanford writing contest, and he said, can I read your script, right? And you're like, oh, of course, yeah, no, whatever. And I sent it to him, and 2 days later he says, yes, we're taking it to ABC, what else do you have? But you have to play it right, because you have to pick who you take your chances on, and who you recommend to people. And I've had recommendations that have burned me, and so I get more cautious.
Yeah, I think being a writer in this business is maybe 50% being a good writer, and the other 50% is having good relationships and having a good personality. People have to like you. If they don't like you, then they're not going to want to be in a room with you for 12 hours. So there's that.
We're talking about years of commitment when you hire somebody. If you're in a writer's room, it's how many hours a day?
Yeah, I mean, to anywhere from 8 to 20 on some shows.
And if you get hired on a feature, no, it's not every day most of the time, but it's years. Amazon was 2 years of work that they had to like me.
Right. And you have to come at it as a business, too. I mean, yes, this is an art form. We are all writers. But I think at the end of the day, this is a business. And if I write something on spec and I sell it, I'm a little more attached to the fight. But if I'm really hired on an open assignment, at the end of the day, they're my boss. And my mother always asks me when I do a rewrite, is it worse? And I said, no, it is always my job, no matter the note, to make it better. And that is like probably the hardest thing to do in the job.
Bare minimum different.
Yeah,
You know?
equal, slide
just
across.
different. But you can never, I was actually talking to Lauren about this just today, about, you know, in doing the Mulan rewrite, it is getting better. We're totally stoked with how much better the second draft.
Are you stoked? That's a good word.
Yeah. With how much better the second draft is than the first draft. That's not to say the first draft was bad in any way. But we took Disney's notes, we've really embraced them. We thought, you know, because at first we were like, really, we lose this, we lose that. But we said, no, what do we gain? And we got super excited about what we gain. And because we got so invested in what we gained by those changes, now they're rippling through the script in beautiful ways that are making us, I mean, I'm really excited about this. You guys are gonna love this movie.
Yeah. How wonderful. All right, well, we were talking about mentoring, and I think that's very interesting. Can you tell us individually who you would consider your mentor? What did they provide you, and what are you providing now in that relationship? Start with Kate.
I have a lot of people I've worked with/for that I consider to be mentors, but none of them have ever, you know, formally been like, you know, I'm your mentor. USC paired me with someone when I graduated who was great and helpful, but somebody actually approached me a couple of years ago when they were graduating from USC, and I was just a writer's assistant, and they were like, would you consider mentoring me? And I was like, I don't think I'll be that much help to you. I don't know, I can't hire. And he's like, no, I really think you could teach me some things. And he's staffed, and I think that's a part, I mean, he's a very smart and talented writer, but also, like, I was very honest with him, like, there will be sucky things, like maybe you get a job at an agency so you know a lot of people, or maybe do this or maybe do that. And I think USC paired me with a working writer, and she gave me the best advice she could at the time. But there was already too much of a gap. Like, it's amazing how a more junior person can be a really invaluable mentor. And now the thing that I do is my boss in Rectify, Ray McKinnon, made me a writer, got me nominated for a Writers Guild Award, staffed me. So I will just point blank say to him, like, I'm sorry, Ray, you're my mentor. You don't have to take me out for coffee, you know, but you're my mentor. You'll have a job on every show I ever sell, so suck it.
Yeah.
He seems to take it pretty well.
Cool.
I haven't had a writing mentor. I would like to have one. That would be cool. But I have had career mentors, and one of mine was actually one of my professors. So that's one thing. Keep in touch with your professors. That, for me, helped me out so much in life. Your professors, they know stuff, they have connections, especially if you're in an MFA program for screenwriting. Your professors are invaluable. My professors, I went to Cal State Northridge. I took a meeting with all of them just before I graduated. And I said, hey, I'm graduating and I don't know what's gonna happen next. And all of them had something for me. Hey, what about this program that you can enter to learn more? What about this internship that I can recommend you for? And so one of my professors who recommended me for my first internship, because of that, I ended up getting hired full-time. It was at the International Documentary Association. And then when I started my company, now they're one of my clients. And she was so involved with the organization that really helped me out. She mentored me in terms of my production company. She got me involved with the Alliance for Women in Media, of which now I'm on the board of directors. So I definitely, her name is Mary Schaefer. She's awesome. She's been my career mentor, but I don't have a writing mentor. So, if anyone knows a writing mentor and here wants to mentor me, I'm up for that. So, yeah.
Wonderful. But you make a great point about joining groups like that, also for networking, and then volunteering. Don't just show up at their events, volunteer to help organize things. That's a wonderful way to be known by more people.
Absolutely. I volunteered for IDA before I interned there, before I got hired there, before they became my client. I was a member of Alliance for Women in Media way before I got onto their board of directors. It's it's important to get involved with organizations like that. You never know who you're going to meet at a networking event or by volunteering at one of these places. So yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. Allison.
Well, I met a showrunner at a USC event, and I wrote 2 pilots and a feature for him, and then he eventually staffed me on 90210. So that was sort of my break-in, and then he stayed in television. I went off to features. I would say the relationships. I don't think I have a mentor. I would say the relationships that have been key. I don't know, maybe I should make Donna my mentor. She's got really good taste.
Yeah.
Maybe my new producer will be. But I think it's your peers and it's the people you're working for. And I would say, hands down, the most important relationship that you should be cultivating right now is your fellow student. Because Hollywood sucks. And it's brutal. And the hardest thing to find is a friend that's going to be happy for your successes. And that doesn't mean you're not jealous occasionally. Right.
Deep down, in the darkest corner of your heart.
You might be a little bit, but you truly, deeply support each other. And you read each other's stuff, and you give honest feedback, and you pick each other up. And it was something that even now, I get phone calls from the USC, I went to grad school, from people being like, hey, can you meet with me? Because they've gotten stalled in their career. And the answer, they always say, how, are you working? And the best advice I can give is you should never be working on one script. You need to be working on 4 to 5 projects at one time, all the time. And
if you can handle more, do more.
Yeah. But it's your friends that are going to keep you going, especially if they give you deadlines. So those are the relationships that are coming into play now, I think. Now some of those people are executives, and you can call them up and have a meeting, and it's fun. But
technically, the Writers Guild assigned me a mentor. I went to his house for pizza every 6 weeks or something. But just like Kate said, he was so far ahead in his career that his advice was interesting, and I do think has helped. But it's not the day-to-day, real intimate, hold your hand and walk you through things kind of advice that. Honestly, yeah. Allison is my greatest mentor. Oh. And, particularly because she was a couple years ahead of me and Lauren, and so she could read our stuff and give us really great feedback, and Allison has gone through things that she can.
Yeah.
When I was going in for my first round of pitches, Allison could be like, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what you should expect. This is what you should prepare. And that's not something that a guy with millions of dollars in box office receipts is going to be able to help you with.
Aaron Sorkin's not going to tell you how to get YouTube series.
He's not.
He's not.
Allison knows how to get a YouTube series.
YouTube series. And honestly, that's why I think your first work is going to come from is the internet. But it's the Wild West, so you've got to talk to other people that are in the Wild West.
Yeah.
I have a village of mentors. So my first one is this wonderful woman named Joyce Burdett, who worked nonstop in the 80s in television. She created Diagnosis Murder, and I met her while I was writing my master's thesis at USC, working part-time at the Pilates studio where I worked out, and she was a client there. And one day we were having a social event at the studio, and she heard me talking about what I thought was the bullshit way George Clooney left ER. Because I was like, I don't understand why you didn't go look for his kid. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, in season 1, he has a kid he's never met. And I was like, why didn't he go look for the kid? And like, Carol, I can't have a life with you until I go settle this with the kid. And she was like, what's the last thing you wrote? And I was like, oh, I just wrote a new spec. And she was like, send that to me and let me read it. And she is the person who every time I would be like, oh, I can't enter one more Disney Fellowship application, whatever. And she was like, no, you can. Go finish the spec and fill out that application and do it. And so she kind of kept after me. When I wrote her and said, hey, I just got an email that I'm a finalist for the CBS Writers Mentoring Program, she wrote them and told them that they would be crazy not to take me. And, it's like that. How can I put into words how grateful I am for that? But it's because we built the friendship that then turned into her investment in my career. And through the CBS program, I met Carol Kirshner, who runs that program, runs, I think, every program. She runs the showrunners training program at the Guild. She runs the Humanitas program. And Carol is very invested in developing young writers, women writers, writers from diverse backgrounds, and we jokingly refer to her as my Jewish mom, who lives here in LA. And she's the person I kind of go to for career advice. This was the first staffing season where I actually had to make some decisions. It wasn't just, please give me a job. And, it's nice to have that person you can go to and be absolutely honest with and talk about, and you're not worried about offending them. Her investment is in my success and my happiness. I did the NBC Writers on the Bridge program after that, which Karen Horn and Jen Grisanti run. The great thing about these programs, for any of you that are interested in television, once you are in them, these are people who will advocate for you for life if you keep your relationship with them strong and intact. Every job I've gone out for, my mentors at the CBS program have reached out for me. My mentors at NBC have reached out for me. When I was up for Ironside, the only person I had to meet with, and this never happens, is the showrunner, because everyone else involved in the project had already met me over the course of my writing program life, and was like, yes, she's great. If Ken likes her, we're awesome. You know, that's great. And two of my mentors through that program were two executives who work at NBC Universal. And when I was on Allegiance last year, perhaps I think probably the proudest moment I've had as a writer so far is I wrote my script and we went in for the notes call, and without them knowing I was in the room, they were like, this is a great, well, we're so excited about this episode, the script is great. And then my EPs were like, well, Nicole's here, you can tell her. And they were like, oh, we're so proud of you. Because I was terrified. I'm like, these are two people who helped me get this job. If they hated the script, I'm gonna be heartbroken. But they didn't, and so it was great. And then what I try to do now, because I've benefited so much from mentoring, is I go back often to those programs and talk to the writers who are coming through now. I try to make myself available to them when they're getting ready for staffing and they want to have coffee and pick my brain and ask for advice about what it's like to go on meetings and all of those things. And though I am not a prolific blogger, I do occasionally blog about what it's like, what my job experiences have been like, what my advice is to people who are staffing because I can't have coffee with everyone. And I think that's, to me, like so important because the mentoring has been so valuable to me. And I mean, I've built super strong friendships out of that. I want to pay them back by now mentoring somebody else. So I think that's, once you find someone who's helping you, pay it backwards and help someone else come up.
I want to open it up to the folks in the audience to ask questions if anybody has some, so let's see what we have going on.
I've started really even writing TV because everyone keeps telling me, including my two friends who are professional staffed writers, that you can't start out writing movies, that you have to write TV because that's where all the work is, and nobody buys scripts for features from unknown writers, la da 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 da. So, and I tend to have attitudes of like, well, watch me, but I would like practical advice for how to show them all that they're wrong.
Well, I will say the Writers Guild numbers are, I think it's 70% of our jobs are in TV, 30% in features. So the numbers are very skewed. If you want, I mean, look, it's not easy to get any of these jobs. I will preface this statement, but there are a lot more jobs to be had in television. So during that year of unemployment I mentioned between the Amazon gig and the Disney gig, my writing partner and I were writing TV because we thought we would be going out for staffing this season. Now we sold Mulan to Disney, so we didn't have to, which was great. Not that I think writing in a writer's room wouldn't be awesome, but I really like working in my pajamas. So
That's not a problem.
It's not a problem. Noted.
Blanket totally acceptable.
Blanket acceptable.
So, and you know, we also figured, honestly, as a team, we were even more appealing to TV because, you know, you get two writers for the price of one, which is great in a writer's room if you like us. There are all kinds of, you know, when people are staffing TV, digression here, you know, because I asked a lot of questions because I thought I was going out. You know, staff, showrunners are really, they're looking to make a baseball team, right? So like, they're not gonna have all writers who are good at one thing. They're gonna have only one person who is good at any individual thing. So like, you getting a job or not getting a job has more to do with how you fit on the baseball team than it does about your talent. Mm-hmm. So don't, if you don't get a job, like, you were a pitcher when they already had a pitcher. So, digression. In terms of features, there are a lot of really great online resources, honestly. I highly recommend contests. I personally think the more obscure the better, because your chances are better. It certainly worked for me. But, also the big ones are great if you can place, if you can quarterfinal or better in, Slam Dance Nichols, Script Pimp, Austin, like all of these really mean something. Blacklist. But there's Ink Tip, which is great. I really recommend it. It's a way for, it's for your lower budget stuff, but it's a way for producers to just buy something. And particularly if you're not Guild yet, there's a lot of opportunity on Ink Tip. Once you're WGA, the numbers could shift a little bit because these are mostly really low budget stuff, but it could be your first credit, which would be amazing. There's Virtual Pitch Fest, which is another great way of getting your scripts out there. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of people making movies still, and there's still a lot of money and business happening in it. It's shifting. There's a lot of stuff happening online. I do agree that if you can get a job, any job, it is better than not getting a job. So because web is really the easiest way in. Like I tell people, write a web series. You can make that yourselves. Do that. Then again, you have a produced credit. And it is way easier and cheaper than making a short. So whatever way you can get a produced credit, it really doesn't matter. Get one. I say this as someone who does not have a produced credit, right? And this has been a problem for me.
But in the feature world, selling a spec, they don't care who you are, they care about that script. Because the moment they buy it, they can fire you. You have no power in features. So I actually advocate as an unknown, write the most kick-ass spec you've ever written and just sell it or try and get noticed, because to get staffed on a TV show, you have got to know people.
Yeah, but I will say the caveat to that, because Allison is absolutely correct. Write a kick-ass spec and you will get noticed. But you have to put it on the blacklist or win a contest with it or have an agent or have a producer attached. You can't sell it except to places like Ink Tip. You can't sell it without knowing somebody, right? You either have an agent or you have a producer attached. And if you have one of those things, that's wonderful.
Which was the problem Elizabeth kept getting stuck in.
Yeah, all through our Amazon job, we didn't have agents. I was a working writer with a job who could not, and a kick-ass recommendation from my producer and exec over at Amazon, and I could not get an agent.
But a lot of people regret that now.
I like to think so. And it actually was doing a TV pilot with some friends who were further along who were gracious enough to bring me and Lauren in on it, and their reps took us because of that experience. So, so by the time we were selling Mulan, we had both an agent and a producer attached. So we were in great shape. But before we had those, we were on Ink Tip. We were on Virtual Pitch Fest. We were hustling our lower budget stuff. The higher budget things are, because if that's where your heart is, that's great. Do it. Write the best script you can. But that's blacklist, that's contests. Honestly, don't bother for things like Ink Tip. Nobody, they're looking for $5 to $10 million things for the most part. So.
Excellent. Who's next? Kanisha, behind you, or?
Hello, incredible ladies. Thank you for being here. First of all, I'm Kanisha. It's lovely to meet you. And we are, part of what we're doing in the MFA is we have a podcast where we interview incredible female screenwriters. So first I'd like to invite you all to be on that podcast. I'm the host and I want to ask you lots of questions and get your names out into the world, not just in the business world, but so that women know what you're doing and can fully support you to what you were saying. And I had a question. We're talking about the art and the business and doing both. So I was wondering if you could give me one piece of take it to the page advice, like you as a writer, what you would give to another writer, and one piece of business advice. And I'm asking the whole panel.
I'll jump in. I would say, I think across the board, definitely if you want to work in TV, just know you will get notes that will make you want to beat your head into something, but your job is to negotiate that note. So you have to develop a muscle to not take it personally, to not react, and to find a way to deal with it. Even if you're not going to take the note, you have to find a way to negotiate it. And so that's certainly in TV one of the most important skills you can have. I will be honest with you that I struggled with that a little bit before I got staffed for the first time, and my mentors helped me get past that so that when I got a script handed back to me that was like, this is a little flat, I was able to take those notes and go and fix it and probably save my job by coming back in with a script that my showrunner was like, that's what I knew you could do. So I think on the page, don't take the notes personally. You don't have to take them, but someone's offering you advice, and just be grateful and say thank you and make a decision on your own. If you're on staff, the decision's a lot less yours, but often your showrunner will be like, we're just gonna finesse the wording a little bit, we're not really gonna take that note. And that's, how you'll deal with that. And business advice, I will say, whatever it is you want to write, know it like the back of your hand. I watch more television than almost any human being on earth should ever have watched in their lifetime. And it's a running joke in our room that someone will mention something and I'm like, oh, that show or that TV movie or that whatever, because I love it. That's why I write television. I love television. And it's so beneficial to be able to go out and meet for any job. You don't have a limitation because you can, you only want to write cool cable shows, but all the jobs are going to be in procedurals. So know your procedurals, know what makes a good one. So you don't have to love them, but know how they work. So if you want to write big budget action movies, know all the best ones. So you can go out and be like, it's sort of like this. Like, that's what I want to do. Like Fast and Furious meets, James Bond. Like, whatever it is, know them. So I'd say do your homework is
Great advice.
Yeah, and I just want to jump into, as somebody who runs a business and is also writing, do what you have to do to make money. So that's why I have my own company. I make money from that, but always keep writing. So one of the things I do is, yes, I write and develop for other people. I also do it for myself. So I'm constantly writing specs and pilots and features and shorts and building my portfolio and telling my manager, hey, I wrote this new thing, because that's what's really going to get you better as a writer. Make sure you're constantly writing, practicing, getting notes on it. And you're still, not just like, okay, I'm just doing this. I mean, you sometimes need money for rent and food. So, have your job, whether it's in the industry or not, but constantly keep writing. I think that's the most helpful thing to just getting better as a writer and then eventually getting a job as a writer.
Structure. I am like a hardcore structure person, and I've gotten in debates at 5 a.m. with guys in grad school that are like, no, but Memento broke all the rules. Like, do not quote me Memento. There is a structure. It has worked for decades. I hit my point of attack between 25 and 30, and if it's after 30, I rewrite till I get it right. I know the words inciting incident, point of attack, what is it, whiff of death, all is lost moment. Like, I live by these. And there's no shame in that. It's gonna make your life a lot easier.
So much easier.
Business-wise, always align yourself with someone ahead of you when you're getting someone attached. Just because they're your buddy, it doesn't mean you should let them direct your film. And you need to separate your personal relationships from that. And then the other thing that I've seen people do, and I've done it and I've learned the hard way, is when you're in a meeting and they ask you if you can do something, your answer is yes. Can you change both of the leads to men? Because until you get credits and you get jobs, you're not going to have the power to affect change.
My page advice is writing is rewriting. You fail almost every time when you put those first words down on the page. It is almost never right. So just embrace the failure, move through it, write it again, and probably 10 more times until it's actually on hitting the point of attack on page 25 or getting the character beat out or whatever it is. But my piece of business advice is related to that, because you also have to know when to stop. And that might mean stop writing and say, this is good enough, and we're going to send it out into the world and see if somebody bites. But it also might be like, this project is a dud. I need to let it go, put it in a drawer, maybe revisit it 5 years from now, but probably never again. And it hurts to say, I just spent 6 months writing this feature script that I'm now probably going to throw away. But if it's a dud, let it go, really. If you can't move on to the next project, you can't be a professional writer.
My business advice is that I'm just going to steal wildly from a Writers Guild event that I went to that was like, oh, that's really smart. The staff writer has to be invaluable. Staff writer has to be like oxygen in the air. So even though I'm on hiatus for Rectify, I did just a ton of interactive content for the website because the website wanted to spend money to promote the show, and I was going to help them do that. I mean, I got paid, but we did like a podcast, and we did a apply for a job at Thrifty Town, and which Rectify character are you, and like interactive key art that you click on it and things play. And they kept coming to me with ideas, and I kept doing mock-ups and sending them to the producers and saying, if you like this, I'll do it. If it doesn't feel like a fit for the show, no water off my back. It's just, I'm doing it because honestly, it would be a headache for the people above me, and I just want to be helpful. So that's business advice. Page advice. In my career, I seem to only ever work on these shows with this, I mean, all television shows have talented actors. The actors on the shows I work on blow my mind, and they always want to play the decision. And if you don't put the decision on the page, they'll make you put the decision on the page. So at this point, I always put the decision on the page. And it's hard because the rule with screenwriting is it has to be external. And sometimes Michael Clayton has probably the best show the decision moment of all time, where he's literally got the NDA he has to sign to get the check in one hand, and the like crazy deranged Xerox that his friend wrote about the drug, the poison that's killing people, in the other hand. And someone walks in the room and they're like, are you done with that? And he just, George Clooney just sort of like, which one am I gonna? And he makes his decision. But like, I had no idea I'd spent so much of my life writing the decision. So get good at writing the decision.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Pass it on. Who's next? Huh? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Pamela Scott. Thank you all for coming. I would love to hear from each of you on, how do I put this? A lesson learned that you, she's already smiling. Something that, maybe it was a mistake that was made, but something that was very, very important in your career that you could pass on to new writers.
Mine was don't turn into a bitch. No, like, it was on television, and it's like, you're exhausted, you're stressed. On some shows, you're pitted against each other. There's a lot of backstabbing going on. And it was like Tina Fey's Mean Girls. And you have to be really careful. And there was the decision moment where I was like, okay, I can either keep going down this path where I'm not liking who I am, or I can kill him with kindness. And I chose to kill him with kindness, and it drove them nuts. And it is a defining moment in my career, and it's something that I am my toughest critic. And at the end of the day, I want to be successful, but I also truly, deeply want to be a good person. And that's what I learned very early on in my career is it's not worth going to the dark side and pull yourself back when you get there.
Probably the roughest moment I've had as a writer was the first year I was out for staffing. If you work in TV and you go on meetings, you'll hear a lot, it's down to you and one other person. And you're waiting for the phone call about whether it's you or the other person. So it was Memorial Day weekend, and on Thursday, I found out it was the other person at one job. And on Friday, I found out it was the other person at another job. And now here's this beautiful 3-day weekend ahead of me. So my agent and my manager both called to check on me and make sure I was okay. And I got off the phone with them Friday night, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna cry for the next 12 hours because my heart was broken. You know, you work really hard, and I knew that I could have done both those jobs. So I let myself be heartbroken for a night. And on Saturday morning, I got up and I said, what can you do to help yourself as a writer today? And it was realizing that every other horrible thing I'd been through in my life made this nothing. Like, it was a heartbreak, but I can get up from this. And so that day I entered the Disney Fellowship, and I submitted a script to Austin. And that pilot script ended up making the finals, and I went to Austin and made a ton of friends who are still my friends, and we exchange work with each other. And it's like, it's just what's the next thing? You don't have to worry about, oh my God, now staffing's not gonna be for another year. It's, okay, so what do I do next to make sure this doesn't kill me? Like, you just have to keep getting back up, because you will get told no 1,000,000 times. And you can't let that break you. They told us in the CBS program that you will look around the table. There are people here who will not be here in 10 years because they're going to decide they just can't handle this. It's too hard. They don't want to do it. But you can still be here if you're willing to take it. And that's how I look at it. It's like, they're going to carry my cold, dead corpse off a set.
Yes.
Because I am not going anywhere.
Those are such beautiful mistakes that led to positive realization stories. I feel like mine is so much angstier. Because I really like failed to learn this lesson for so long. It goes back to what Allison said, like really be careful who you attach to your projects, because I love stories. I love them all, and I love people. And it has made it very easy over the years for me to be like, oh my God, that story you have is a great story. I'd like to work on that with you. And I have done that so many times. And it has been a bad idea every time.
And then we have to sit down to tea, and I have to be like, Elizabeth and Lauren, stop doing this.
So I'm not saying that collaboration is bad, right? It can be great. I mean, I have a writing partner. I've had her we've been together for 10 years. We love each other, and our work is so much better because we're collaborators. But that is a different thing than like just sort of meeting somebody kind of casually, chatting about a story, being like, let's do this thing, which is a thing that I do. Don't do it. Like, really be sure that you guys have the same vision, are gonna be able to go down a year-long path, possibly longer. If something good happens with the script, you might be paired up forever. Seriously. Forever. It happens to people, right? You paper team on something, and then it sells, and now you're a team. But you don't actually like each other. What do you do? How do you get out of this? Because now you're repped by the same people, and you're hired on a TV show together, or you're hired on a movie together. So be very careful.
There's a massive sitcom that has 2 rooms, and they alternate episodes because they can't stand to see each other. Massive sitcom.
Yeah. My mistake is kind of what Elizabeth said. It's very similar. I attached myself to a project where none of the people working on the project knew what they were doing. So the end result looks awful, and my name will be on that project for eternity. So be very careful what you attach yourself to. You know, when you're just out of college and you're like, yeah, this is going to be great. I'll get experience working on this. That's awesome, but yeah, be careful who you work with, and if they, really know what they're doing, how the project, what the project is exactly, because your name will be attached to it, and that will be around forever. So there's that.
I'll do a twofer because they're like Russian dolls. They fit inside each other. People get fired. It happens. People get fired. And somebody got fired, and that person was a writer on a television show. And an intern heard about it and turned to the writer's assistant and said, do you think there's a chance I get a freelance script? And the air crystals, they visibly turned to ice, and everything just went ice cold, because there were 5 or 6 assistants and junior writers with an earshot of this intern, and all of those people were the people who were going to get a freelance script if there was a freelance script. But none of them were going to do anything about the intern being dumb, except one assistant who was like, that person is a risk to me. I'm going to the showrunner and I'm telling that showrunner what I just heard. And that was that intern's last day. So that's that person's mistake. My mistake is that I witnessed that, and flaming letters on my brain was do not presume you are worthy. It was just branded on me. And my first season as a staff writer, I prefaced 100% of my pitches with, this is probably a terrible idea, but, or this is not going to be this, but which is a thing that happens in the room and is appropriate some percentage that is less than 100% of the time. Until, like, one point, my boss came in, he'd had an appointment of some kind, and the room got a late start. And he's like, we don't have any time. We can't talk about SEC football. He pointed to one writer. We can't take any time arguing about where we're having lunch. He pointed to another writer. And we can't preface our pitches with how they're not good. And he pointed at me. And I was like, well, then I guess I'm done. So those are two for mistake.
Hi, my name is Yasser, and thank you so much for coming. I'm not a woman, but I can learn a lot from you. My question is that coming from the background where I come from and having the experience that I have and I lived, being in Hollywood, what's your advice on, and this is for me and for everyone else, should I stick with my own stories that may not be really of any interest to anyone in Hollywood to be produced or to be seen or to be known at all, but I know I'll put a lot of heart into it because I know it's my story? Or should I do what the demand asks for and write something that I can write about, but it won't be as much heart as if it was my story, to get my foot into the door?
I mean, I definitely have a big opinion on this. I really think when writers say, write what you know, that is not to be taken literally. Do not write a story about your boring lives. My life is boring, your lives are probably boring. There is a possibility that you have lived an extraordinary life. But really think about it, right? But you do know how to be a person, right? And you've had all kinds of emotional experiences that are relevant to storytelling, and those thoughts and feelings that you've had, put those in your script. Mm-hmm. Make sure that everything you write has as much heart and as much personality and as much you as you can put in that script. Because you need you to write differently than everybody else, or you'll never get a job, right? You have to, if you're interchangeable, then they might as well hire somebody who's already been hired before. You've got to be unique. But it's a business. Frame your experience, what you want to write about, in a way that is entertaining to the masses. Because we are not doing plays, we're not even doing books. Like you have to be writing a story that millions of people are going to find interesting, right? So my husband is an artistic director of a theater, and they do beautiful work, but their audience size is, a few thousand, right? Like, they're doing totally different stories that are never going to play on the big screen, and that's the place those stories belong. You're in Hollywood. Like, you want to write something that nobody else is going to relate to? Go write a play, right? Like, honestly, I love the theater. I come from the theater. I think that that's the place where you can really challenge people. You can also challenge people in novels. Like, right, you're trying to sell maybe 200,000 copies of a book. It's a huge success if you sell a couple 100,000 copies. You can write an ebook, publish it yourself, and make good money, right? If you're writing a movie, you better think, can 20 million people globally, because our industry is global now. Don't think, do 20 million people in the US want to see it? Do 20 million people in the world want to see it? Does China want to see it? That's our biggest market, right? Does Russia want to see it? That's your job.
I disagree.
I also disagree.
Agree with
That'd be fun.
I would not write a script about a 19-year-old girl moving to that's what I did, moving to Los Angeles on my own. Even if you have an interesting story. I still wouldn't do it, because exactly what Elizabeth said. I think writing what you know is putting some of yourself into your writing, and maybe writing from experience, and maybe things that you have emotionally experienced, and maybe even a scene of like something that may have happened to you. But maybe not an entire story. I think you can put enough of yourself into a story and still have your story be marketable, and have it be something that people are going to buy and watch. Because what is the ultimate goal here? Is it to sell a script, or is it to really write a great script based on something you're really passionate about? You can actually do both. Write that amazing script and have that, and then write another script that's marketable. But you got to have that marketable one too. I agree with Elizabeth.
Well, briefly, Aden, because I want to hear from Kate and Allison, let's face it, J.K. Rowling did not attend Hogwarts. But she was a girl growing up with friends, dealing with her own intelligence, and where did she fit in? So that was the part of her that came to Harry Potter.
For the defense.
We are ready.
The people I've worked for, Matt Weiner, sitcom writer, wrote a period piece that HBO, whom he'd worked for at Sopranos, told him, we are not going to make any more period pieces, and then they greenlit Rome. Vince Gilligan was out of work. Like, he'd left, the X-Files universe had wrapped, and he was not getting pitches anymore, and he and his friend were like, man, I don't know, maybe we should just get in an RV and travel the country selling meth and just doing stuff. I mean, crazy, unsellable. They themselves have said, like, how many times they sat across from people and they were like, he's a chemistry teacher, but he cooks meth. And the show that I'm on now, Rectify, had a very long development trajectory to the point where it was generally assumed it was never going to get made, and then the phone rang. And it's about a man who was on death row for 18 years for the graphic rape and murder of his high school girlfriend. And the pilot and the second episode have scenes in them that I can't even believe we got to put that on television. I still don't even believe it. I still don't. So I guess maybe because I do television, maybe because I work in this AMC, Sundance, smaller budget, make your stake, be a marquee show world. Now, it will be said, Matt didn't work in advertising. Vince never cooked meth. Ray never served a life sentence. But Ray was an actor, is still an actor who doesn't get parts sometimes because he's not, the look they're looking for. And Vince felt that moment of economic powerlessness where his skills no longer had a place in the marketplace. And Matt was someone who wanted to tell a specific kind of story, and he was trapped in the sitcom world, much like Don Draper is really an artist with something to say about the human condition trapped in advertising. And so there's truth about those men in their pilots, in their series, that you can speak to your truth like so clearly without hanging a sign on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is semantics. Like, obviously, you don't want to do a documentary of your actual life because we would all snooze. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a very personal story. I think my answer to your question is you should do both. Because here's how Hollywood works. You have a sample that will never get made, but is so interesting and quirky and original that you get the meeting. That's what you need to write to get meetings. Then you want to write a spec that is based on a massive IP that nobody owns yet, so there's a built-in franchise, and you go and you sell it like Milan or Agatha Christie. You do both. But I will tell you that the very first feature script that got me all of my teen work was called Stick Girls, and it was semi-autobiographical about me growing up in Florida, and my best friend was half Korean, and her dad committed suicide when we were in 8th grade. And it was a Stand By Me journey, and did what happened after the point of attack happen in real life? No, but did I really have to play Rosa Parks?
She really did.
I really did. And like, when God hands you gold where you're the stage manager of an all African-American cast and the lead gets in a car accident and you have to play Rosa Parks, you better put that out for the world to see. Because that's gold. So there are going to be each of your lives that you need to pull from. Mean Girls 2, my high school friends said that it was like watching me in high school talk to them, like mine everything you can. I got the job for NASA because I worked for NASA for 4 years growing up. So I think it's crucial that you suck everything you can out of your lives and put it on the screen, and you can't, the best advice I can give you in doing that is fictionalize it. You are under no obligation to tell the truth. It's a fictionalized version. I tell stories all the time, and my fiance corrects me, and I'm like, stop it. I added these details for a reason. It's better this way. And it drives him crazy. But that, I think, is my job as a writer. Yeah.
For sure. And if you want to pursue television at all, you're going to have basically two things you have to have, which is a spec of an existing TV show that sounds like the show, could be on the show. Someone can read it and envision this airing as week 21 of that show. it also has to be special. So you have to find the thing about that show you love and bring it to life in that world that sounds just like the show, but is special because you wrote it. Because if you are speccing something that's super popular, like I guarantee you, people are getting inundated with Empire specs this year. You have to be the best Empire script that everyone's going to read. If you love a show that people tell you, I don't think anyone in the industry really writes that, say, I don't care, and write it anyway, because you were going to write the hell out of it. And the spec that got me into the program, I got in my start from, I had so many people say to me, I don't even watch this show, but I had to find out how the story ends. That's what you want, because you're competing against yourself at that point. You want to stand out. And then the other thing you're going to do is write an original pilot that is as amazing and brilliant as you can possibly be on a page, because that's actually what's going to get you to the meeting with the showrunner. The spec is proof to them that you can write a show that already exists, and they're not going to hand you a script assignment and then you're going to try to be cool and not write the show. So that's what the spec is there for. Your pilot is going to be whatever you're passionate about, and you've always wanted this show to be on TV, and don't hold anything back. Put it all in that pilot, because if you somehow magically sold it, then the studio is going to say, but we want to hold this for later. We want to hold this for later. That's great. But for you to get a job or an agent or any of those things that you need to build a career, put everything in that pilot. And just make it as you as it can possibly be. And love it. I actually went on meetings my first year staffing where I had a couple of execs say to me, like, it's so wonderful how excited you are about your work. And I was like, do people come in not excited about their work?
We do. I have this problem, right? I have a problem going into the room and being excited about my own work. I can be excited about other people's work.
So it was you.
Yeah. No, it is a really good note, because sometimes we walk out of the meeting and we were like, they said they really enjoyed our pilot script, and we were like, yeah, okay, great, thanks. What? What were we thinking? We were supposed to be like, yes, isn't it wonderful? We love it too.
Yes.
We're deeply passionate about these characters. Because inside I am, but I have trouble showing it.
Even if in the back of your head you're thinking, I can't believe my rep sent that script.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, because you're like, cause sometimes you're like, really? I had 2 others that are so much better samples for this. But you're just like, yes, and what did you think about that thing at the end of Act 3? Because people usually aren't sure one or the other, and just engage in the conversation and be proud of it, because they liked it enough to call you in. So that's all that really matters.
The best awful meeting you'll ever get in Hollywood is when you've been asked to do a rewrite take and you've spent like weeks on this, and you go in and you sit down and you're like, I'm really excited about this project, and the exec goes, I'm glad someone is, I'm totally over it. And you're like, why am I here? And you just walk out and you call your agent, you're like, I wasted all that time, like why am I even here? But then 2 weeks later, best story ever.
It's true.
And it'll happen to you, and you go, really? I just think there's so many possibilities.
Well, that's why we're doing a rewrite, right?
Yeah.
Wait till you hear my take.
Really quick, and just to tack on to that, for any of you that are interested in TV, after you have your kick-ass spec and you have your awesome pilot, then you are going to do it again and again and again as fast as you possibly can, because you have no idea how long it's going to take you to staff. And like, this past season, I'll say it's the first year I've gone out for staffing without a new pilot, because I was so busy working, I couldn't do it. And my reps were like, you have 6, honey, it's okay. Yeah. And I was like, no, I need a new one. They were like, you can write one for next year, just take a breath. Yeah. But it's like the need for new material will never go away. So just any idea you have, any idea you love, get a plan in place for when you're gonna write it.
I'm wondering if you guys have any advice for someone who writes and directs, and kind of, I guess it would be show running, but for film. And then hand in hand, which kind of goes with that, is she would like to know how it works with a writing partner.
How that came about, because I've heard you mention her a few times.
Yeah. Well, in terms of a writing partner, I mean, it's a marriage. I mean, really, Lauren and we've been friends for more than half our lives. We met while we were both working at the same theater company when we were in high school. We didn't go to the same high school, but she was my boss. And so we have that that feeling that you have in a real loving relationship where you can scream at each other and know the other person's going to turn up again tomorrow. So that's in my opinion, the only way to really have a writing partner, like long term. Some people do find, like, for certain projects or for a couple of years they'll work together, and that's a different thing. It's more temporary, and that can be great too, because going back to your question, I mean, I am a big believer in collaboration, and that's partially from coming from my theater background, but I think, we go into meetings and we don't scare producers because we say, we love to work with producers. We are not auteurs. We collaborate with each other, we collaborate with our producer, we collaborate with our director, and the product is better because all of our brains get on solving the problems. So, I mean, in my personal opinion, I would say find people to work with you. Don't be all of those things. I mean, yeah. so meet your classmates and put notices up on the lists and get more people to work with you, because that way you have less responsibility, right? You don't have to worry about missing something because you were doing 3 jobs, but also, honestly, I think you'll get a better product.
Yeah, I was going to say just that is, don't split your focus. Focus on the one thing you want to do. If it's directing, be the director. If it's writing, be the writer. But don't split your focus, because when you split your focus, that's when, you feel like you've taken on too much and maybe the product isn't what you thought it was going to be because you've split your focus. So definitely, if you can find other people who do that and do that well, if you make short films, watch other short films and see who's DPing them. If you really like the camera work in a film, see who did that, or see who directed this short film, and if you can collaborate with them and be like, hey, I have this production company, we have this script, we have this financing, we want to do this short. Definitely collaborate with other people whose work you've seen and like. Cannot stress that enough. So yeah, that would be my advice too, is pick the one thing you want to do and don't split your focus. And collaborate. If you can find good collaborators and you like their work, go ahead and do it.
And from the TV side of things, I have not had a full-time writing partner, but I work in Berlanti Camp, and in Berlanti Camp, all the shows are team-ups of writers. So my first episode of Mysteries of Laura, I co-wrote with my showrunner. No pressure. But it may be different depending on who I'm writing with, how we're going to split up the duties or whatever. But like, I probably have already said it once here, and I say it all the time. TV writing is a team sport. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not a writing team member, you will be sharing work on every aspect of your script. So it's important to value other people's contributions to your storytelling, whether it's another writer giving you notes saying, hey, I'm not so sure about that thing in Act 5. They're trying to make your episode better. The props people who say, I'm not sure this is the right, I know this is what you wrote, but I think this would work better, are trying to make your episode better. So there's always collaboration and that sort of thing. But, this is a new experience for me, because I wrote on shows where you went off and wrote the whole draft of your script, and then your EPs gave you notes, and you went back and you did that sort of thing. But I just teamed up with a different producer on an outline, and it was a completely different process than what I went through the first time. But it's, you just sort of have to roll with it and enjoy the process of, oh, different person, different way of doing things, great, okay. So I feel like it's going to be a good skill to take out of this, because, my goal is to become a showrunner, and as a showrunner, I'm going to have to lean on other people to do things for me, because no one person can do everything that is involved in showrunning. So you just sort of have to build on that muscle, I think. And sort of piggybacking off what you said, as far as like finding your voice and doing that, whether it's as a writer or a director, all that. People used to ask me that, like, what is your voice? What is it you write about? And I didn't know the answer to that, because of course I wrote a million kinds of things. I write procedurals, I write modern day versions of Shakespeare, I do all kinds of stuff, and I was like, oh, but I finally figured it out one day when I went back and read a bunch of stuff. And I come from a life that was very much about the face you show the world and what you know to be true about yourself. And that is true in all of my work. It doesn't matter if it's about a street cop or if it's about a guy trying to take over the throne of his family's company. So I think when you look at your work, whatever thing you decide to focus on, think about what's most important to you. And it turns out to me that's the most important piece of storytelling I do.
Because I'm going to say what mine is just because it's relevant to this answer. I would say pretty much everything we've ever written is about teamwork. That's the major value that the characters learn to embrace.
Mine's unexpected heroes, probably.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone's saying theirs. Mine's the double twist. All of my scripts have a double twist. So you have a twist and it, like, you know how Gone Girl has a double twist. Or The Usual Suspects. All of my scripts have a double twist. So that's mine.
This is such a good answer. I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. Wounds carried in the soul since childhood to adulthood that get healed. Like, the worse, the bloodier, the more impossible to solve through conventional therapy. That'll be a protagonist. That's great. That's money in the bank right there.
It is.
I was going to say on the subject of too many things to do. I have straight producer friends. They have a very specific mentality. I love talking to them because it never occurs to them, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to write that. It's like a smell. It's like, I can't stand the taste of cilantro, and they're like, more cilantro for me. Those people exist, and they're not always at the line producer stage yet. Like one of my very good friends literally just became a line producer like last month, but before that she was an associate producer, and before that she was an assistant to producers, and she trained people to always take over the lower rungs of her job, brought them in and was like, I'm going to teach you how to do a call sheet. I'm going to teach you how to do a budget. And she was constantly delegating because she knew that someday she was going to be line producer, and she couldn't still have like her boss open the door and say, is my lunch here? Like, no, lunch had to be taken care of by somebody else so that she could be like, I'm on the phone with the insurance company about covering the actress when she's on horseback. I've got 2 quotes, I'm getting a 3rd one. So she was already moving towards the producer. So find people who don't want to write. As much as we love writing, it's so good, there are people who are like, why would I do that? I'd much rather get on the phone with 3 insurance companies and find out how much it costs to insure an actress on horseback. Find those people and gradually encourage them to take on a responsibility. Mm-hmm. They really, it seems like you're ripping them off, but they really don't want to write. This is what they're really good at. Encourage them in that.
And we wanted to say thank you so much to our panel. This was an exciting time. We all enjoyed what we learned, and we're going to speak later, so have a great night. Thank you so much for joining us.